Tom's going to continue a conversation we had last episode where we talk about the top 10 reasons, and we prompted that. I want to kind of refresh that. The prompts that go into ChatGPT are key to the output. What you put in, yields what comes out, and it has to be really good questions, I guess, for lack of better words. That's the same as a prompt, right? And we can go in deeper, like we talked about before, on how to formulate prompts, but we formulated some prompts here in ChatGPT in a conversation that's given us a lot of feedback. And in that back and forth, Tom and I worked together on these prompts. And then one of the questions was asking ChatGPT with the prompts, give us the top 10 reasons why a mortgage branch manager may not have an understanding of the P&L or financials. So we're kind of having fun with this, like the David Letterman top 10, and Tom's gone through the top 5 in our last episode. You can kind of go back and listen to that. But we're going to start on number 6 here. Tom, I know recently there was some conversation. I think Dave Savage and these guys covered, the importance of AI. Can you talk about, that a little bit? I know you watched that video. They had a really nice output. A couple of a group of them were having conversation on that. Can you share what you've seen out there in the industry right now?
Yeah, and I kind of went kicking and screaming to be able to for you to be able to take your technical side and put this in there, right? So I'm old school, right? So it's a matter of, do I really want to do this? And I think I was blown away by what takeaways I had. And not only are they new takeaways, but they're takeaways that reinforce things that we teach in the Branch Profitability Academy, which was a confidence builder for all of us.
It really was amazing. Some of the answers, we'll read them here, and questions out of ChatGPT are really what we're teaching. So it's fun to see that confirmation in a way that ChatGPT is on the same page. Well, let's get right into it, because there's a lot of depth to the questions and answers here. So we did, again, top 10 reasons why a mortgage branch manager may not have an understanding of the P&L financials. So we have their answer for that, and then kind of, the solution. So we did our top 5 already. Here's number 6. And number 6, it says fear of numbers. For some individuals, numbers can be intimidating, which can cause them to avoid financial analysis altogether. I think this is very clear on why this is the case. Talk about maybe the model of the branch manager, the top producer, the successful, person that has to take on this role. Talk about fear of numbers, Tom.
It's interesting. When I put together the 8 key performance indicators, I had to figure out one of 2 things. Revenue comes in basis points. The rate sheet is built on basis points. LO comp is built on basis points. Expenses come in cash, lump sums of cash. I call it 55-gallon drums of expenses, right? So I had to do one of 2 things. I had to convert the revenue to dollars, which is what I did 15, 20 years ago, making it money. But today, after LO comp, I think it's important we change everything into basis points. So all of my data is based on basis points, which is a struggle. I don't care how many times you do it. I mean, I still remember struggling with it, being able to say, it's kind of counterintuitive that says you're going to come up with a number that's 0.0243. What does that mean? It's 2.43%. But if you take the percent side out and move the decimal out, it's 243 basis points. So that's really the struggle that I see most have, is the knowledge of basis points. You have to think in, I don't have to, you don't have to, but in my system, you have to think in basis points, because we convert everything to basis points. That's really old school. That's probably 35 years ago that I remember guys and girls talking about that. So fear of numbers, the typical salesperson who became a manager, they're pretty good at math, because they've got to figure out ratios and things of that nature that, they're not intimidated by math. But I think it's a matter of learning a different language. I think that's a lot of times people say, I'm learning this language from you, Tom, which is the 8 key performance indicators, right? In BIPs, basis points. And I think that's what you really look at. I think there's a tendency, especially as you get older, I'm a firm, I'm living proof of that. Trying to teach an old dog new tricks. The compliments that I've gotten over the years have been, I take the complex and make it simple. So because I've simplified the P&L, it's pretty easy to learn. It's just a matter of, you just got to be able to buy into the concept. of what we do in the whole basis points thought process. So the fear of numbers probably applies because of the uniqueness of basis points. And the other thing that we've done, which I think most do today, but I might be under anticipating that, you've got to have a production report combined with your P&L. The P&L typically, old school, many years ago, would stand by itself. The P&L would stand here as you look at that. And then on the other side, you would have it standing here. That would be the production report. Well, if I can't divide the volume, the revenue by the volume, I can't get to basis points. So that's the big takeaway that I've had over the years, especially over these last 1,400 P&Ls, for people to be able to look at that and really be able to understand that. So, the numbers themselves, I don't think they're afraid of math. I think it's a matter of adapting to the new mindset of being able to deal with. Trust me, when you do it, I've had nobody go back the other way. Usually when it's happened, people look at this and they say, oh, I get it now. And sometimes I'll see branches push it up to the corporate level and ask for a license of our product, right? So you get an annual license from us to be able to utilize the software that we've created over the past few years.
Fear, by definition, comes from the unknown, right? And the unknown in this case is I'm not so well versed in managing my P&L. It's just unknown. So I kind of stay away from it because I've been having success and kind of moving along without it, or I'm about to go out of business. Maybe I don't know my P&L and I don't know where I'm losing it from. So and I say it's what you've done over the years offer. And I'm going to ask you just to make it clear, because we have testimonials that say, I followed Tom's system. I understand the way he, works with the profitability idea and breaks this thing into basis points. I'm not, I don't want to shock anybody, but this is pretty simple stuff, right, Tom? I mean, it's almost like you have people that bring it in and they see what you do to kind of break down these complex numbers to make it very simple. And you said it earlier, you have a gift of kind of bringing difficult things to a simplicity. Talk about how simple it is, to someone who might have a little bit of fear of the unknown on, listen, I can't really get my arms around my numbers. You're going to tell me there's a simple way to do this?
I promise you this. Come through our program. We will simplify the way you look at a P&L. Now, the heavy lifting starts when we got to fix it. Now we need to dive deeper and understand what composes this revenue number. We've got to look at loan officer by loan officer and see who might be the culprit to that number being too low. When the bottom number is too high, the expense number, when that number is too high, we need to look at that and say, okay, we know this number. Tim, I guess the best way to be able to understand this, and I've said this for many years, I said, anybody who plays golf, let's just pretend that you're playing golf in hole number one, and you get five, you get 5 strokes on that hole. Well, how did you do? The next question's got to be, what was par? Right? If it was a par 5 and you shot 5, you shot par. If you keep doing that, you parred the whole golf course, right? But if it's a par 3 golf course and you registered a par 3, on a par 3 you registered a 5, you kind of suck. You'll be 2 over par on that hole. You'll be 36 over par at the end of the day. So what we've established is pars, right? We've established that says what's normal. Some people don't know what normal is. And some of you are going to look at this and say, I don't know what he's talking about. Revenue minus expense, except for LO compensation, equals something we call CPI, which is a critical profit indicator. 92% of the time, when that critical profit indicator is 130 basis points or above, the branch makes money. How do I know that? Just seeing P&Ls. I equate it sometimes to the World Series of Poker. When you go back in the day of the old timers that were out there, there was no online playing of poker. So guys and girls today can learn how to play poker by doing 7 hands at the same time online. So when they get to the tournament, they've already seen, thousands and thousands and thousands of hands. So they'll know what to do. In our situation, we take the whole P&L and we publish that information without showing who it is, and you'll have an opportunity to be able to say, oh, that's what I want to model my business after, that person right there in that branch. Because look here, man, they're killing it here, they're killing it here, they're knocking this out of the park. And how can I do that, Tom? How are they doing it? Especially if they're part of our program. We can have that person on for our monthly calls and say, here's how I'm doing it, and just share that information, which is similar to YPO of sharing best practices with everyone. So I think it's a matter of that. What's that par, right? And I think that kind of rolls into number 7 here, right?
Yeah, and seeing what par is, and I want to kind of go a little bit deeper on that, is you see what par is. You as part of the academy, you learn how it's not hard to decipher what your par is and what your numbers are, but you're able to see other branches across the country without any ID, no information. You don't know who it is, but it's the same size branch and they have the same conditions or situations, yet they made a lot more money than you did last month. So what happened there? And you can show them what happened, right? That they can duplicate that and learn how to be profitable.
Yeah, I mean, success leaves clues, right? So you look at this and you say, okay, branch A, you look at this and say, here's how they did it. How do you want to get to the point where you made $14,000 this month in profit? If you can get to that number, and that number, you're going to make $14,000. Typically, the problem with most people is they think it's the opposite of what everybody's thinking. The numbers themselves dictate the outcome, right? It's not the other way around. We don't budget for profit's a byproduct of the numbers, right? We don't just plug in a number of profit. You've got to plug in the other numbers to be able to. It's the output. It's like, okay, if we A minus B minus C equals D, D is profit. Game on, right? It's easy to understand that. I think that's the misnomer for most. And also you got to look at this and say, this is not overnight, folks. That's why we encourage everybody to spend 12 months. We make the numbers so reasonable after those first 60 days. I've been told by people who said, Tom, you're insane for making that number so simple. But I want you to be able to figure it out. That says, I want you to be 12 months. And I've got people who've been with me for years utilizing their numbers, right? To interpret, to plug those numbers in and to be able to have access to other people so they can see. The market shifted. We all know that 2 years ago, right? The numbers are different from 2 years ago than they are today, but the system's the same. You can look at this and say, revenue's down a little bit, expenses are down. The people who are making money today are the ones who reacted to lowering that bottom business blood pressure number to become reasonable. Because if you had half the loans in the same number of people, that number doubles. And when that number doubles, you lose money. It's a pretty simple process. The hard part is being able to say, who are we going to let go?
Tell me about, because I know we were talking recently about a branch you were working with that they jumped into the system, learned the system, and they went from, after a few months, from losing money to massive profitability in the last month that you could tell the story about. Tell us about that turnaround. This is a real story. I mean, don't share the name. It's
So I was commissioned to be able to go in and turn around a region. It wasn't a branch. It was a region. This region was just about ready to go out. I mean, they were probably going to lose their people. They were probably going to shut it down, move the people to a different branch, whatever it was. And, in the first month, I looked at the numbers and they were losing $90,000 a month as a region. Well, you couldn't keep that up much longer, and you'd have to pour money into it to look at it. I taught them my system. I worked with them one-on-one with that process, branch by branch. And this is before refi mania, folks. So this is way before the refi market shifted. In 4 months, we changed them from a $90,000 loss to a $168,000 gain. And it wasn't me. It was my system, yes, but it was them who did the heavy lifting, right? I still remember having a conversation, being able to say, here's your number. Like your batting average is this number, right? They had a a par in the rate sheet that was X, and this particular branch was 51 basis points under the par, under the rate sheet, all on an average. And 51 basis points is all the money in the world, right? And I just said, you're 51 basis points under the rate sheet. And they were argumentative with me and said, no, that can't be. And lo and behold, we showed it to them. It's like, whoa, well, find out who's discounting. They went through the loan log and found out that it was a few people who were taking advantage of that. So that's a big shift. There was probably, it's a feather in my cap, but it was a great group. They implemented. That's the big part. Implemented, learned, stay plugged in, and it turned. And to this day, some of those people are my good friends because they said, Tom, I mean, I had some people in that organization that never ran a P&L before. And it's like, just learn it this way. Don't learn it the other way, because I have to undo some of that stuff. And it was, it was a great feather in my cap, but kudos to them for doing it. It wasn't just me. Yes, it was my system. Yes, it was my teaching, but they implemented like maniacs.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a $258,000 swing from 90 to 168. So just a great story, true story to tell. Here, let me give the response from ChatGPT and close out number 6. Here's the response, and it's a lot of the same stuff. Lack of financial goals. Set clear financial goals for branch managers and regularly review progress towards meeting them. Tie performance incentives to financial performance to encourage focus on these goals, right? So it's again setting goals and being prepared. You can't set goals, you can't reach them, you can't really do anything if you don't have the numbers and the knowledge in that period of time. So
it's no different than the NFL or Major League Baseball or whatever it is. If you don't measure it, how many tackles did the guy have in football? What's his batting average in baseball? Right? If you're not measuring it, how do you know how much you should pay the guy? The guy wants $50 million a year or something ridiculous like that. It's like, well, where's your numbers? I don't know. Is the guy good or bad? You need to know that. And I think every other business that I've been around, that's the interesting thing about the YPO connection was these guys were not in the mortgage business. So I learned to be a better business person from others not in the mortgage business. I'm trying to take the mortgage business and teach it to other mortgage people of what I learned.
Yeah, that's why that YPO story is so important to tell, because it matters here. Okay, so let's continue on number 7. Remember, these are the top 10 reasons why a mortgage branch manager may not have an understanding of the P&L or financials. Again, not to any fault of their own. Number 7, limited experience with financial statements. Managers who are new to the industry may not have a lot of experience with financial statements like the P&L, which can make it difficult to understand. So this is ChatGPT's response. I would kind of tweak it a little bit. Managers who are new to the industry, not industry, but new to that role. Can you talk about the problem there that ChatGPT puts out as number 7, Tom?
Well, first of all, it's foreign. You're putting somebody in a situation that's going to be different than they've ever had before. The benchmarks that are typical, saying this is what we require you to do, and it's typically a volume conversation. We need this branch to do $10 million, right? There's a tendency for companies and branches way before the economy that we're in today of just throwing people at the problem. Well, who's going to pay for the people? Everything costs something. The only question is who's going to pay for it. So I heard a story the other day that a person had 16 people on their team. They weren't making the number. Well, one of two things got to happen. Either you got to make a higher number or reduce the number of people, which is the expense side, the bottom business blood pressure number, to reduce that expense. You don't get to negotiate with math. We say it over and over and over again, right? This is A minus B equals C. And you can see how bad your bottom number is. You compare it to others and you say, well, what are they doing? Well, they've right-sized their business to match their production. You don't sit there and hope and pray that you'll still get to 20 million a month. Is it realistic that you're going to do 20 million a month in today's environment? Probably not. If you were used to, you did 20 million during Refi Mania, now you're doing 5. Well, you've got to reduce that staff to be able to do that. So I think that, again, managers haven't seen the repetition. We talked about that playing, the poker players, they get to see repetition over and over and over again. I think they get to see their numbers. How did I do this month compared to last month? How am I doing compared to the rest of the people that are doing $4 million a month in production? And how do I model that? The benchmarks typically are going to be volume driven. unit driven. And it's not going to be, hey, can we hit this number right here? It'll be interesting to see. It'll really be interesting for me to see that I'll see people adapt, organizations adapt to it, to being able to say, listen, we need to hit this number right here. However we get there, you'll see a tremendous amount of success that'll be different. You'll see some people that are killing it on the top number. They'll have the highest top number you've ever seen before, but they're carrying a lot of expense with it, or they're paying a lot out in LO compensation, but they still get to the same point. There's many a branch that will get to the same point, but they'll have different ways of getting there. It depends on your business model.
Yeah, and I want to echo what you do here. We have a piece of this called the business blood pressure, and I think the analogy is apt for looking at. You find out what your blood pressure is. Maybe you have no idea what blood pressure means. A 120/80 means nothing to you, but that's par, like Tom talked about in golfing. But now you know your blood pressure, and the doctor says it's really high. So what are the things I can do to fix it? Well, I could change my diet. I could exercise. I could take some medication. I could meditate, whatever it might be. There's several things that might need to be applied to tweak or change. That's the same thing that Tom's talking about, right? Those numbers here tell you what needs to change. Oh, you know what? You need to eat better. You need to exercise more. This is the result from that analogy of how these tweaks can happen. And the answers are there. Success leaves clues, like was mentioned earlier. And we have, those answers, because it's the same thing happening in a lot of branches across the country. Is that right?
No doubt. Well, just think of the whole concept of business of blood pressure, right? First of all, you need to be able to take it, right? So that means hooking up to the cuff and getting the readings, which is what we're talking about on those 8 key performance indicators. And then the struggle becomes, I still remember, and it's hereditary on my side, I still remember when I first got diagnosed with high blood pressure. It was in Cancun, Mexico. And the guy put the cuff on me, and the number was off the charts. It's like 190/140. And it's just like, and he looked at me as like, he said, do you have high blood pressure? And I said, well, I don't think so. He says, I didn't know what normal was. So yes, you can get a reading, but if you don't know what normal is, you don't know what par is, you don't know that 120/80 number, Tim, that you just mentioned, doesn't do you any good. We can at least, I think that's one of the things we've done is having the ability to be able to show you what we call par, right? That 130 number, which we mentioned, a little while ago, talking about the CPI being 130 or above, you're probably going to make money if that number's there. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, now we got to talk about it.
That really makes it clear, the business blood pressure. Let me give the GPT answer for number 7, failure to analyze financial data. Encourage branch managers to analyze financial data to identify trends, opportunities, and areas for improvement. Offer training and resources on financial data analysis. So again, encourage branch managers to analyze data. Well, you got to be able to get the data quick. You got to be able to know what you're reading. You got to be able to make the areas of improvement, to make those tweaks. And then, how do you get there if you're not there? You got to offer training resources on financial data analysis. So again, it's on you to educate yourself. And how do you get there quickly when you're everybody's super busy, right? How do you get there and get to that piece where you can analyze it? Talk about the solution that ChatGPT offers in number 7, Tom, and how, just your response to that.
Again, it's just a matter of, you're going to see things differently than you've ever seen them before. And you've got to have goals to be able to get to that point. Where you can understand it, right? You can be able to say, how did you do? We're shooting for this number right here. How'd we do? We fell a little bit off. Why was that? I had to take a jumbo loan in at less revenue. And, there's a composite of loan types that will make that top revenue number come in. So I think it's just a matter of, let's just not talk about volume. Let's talk about the whole picture, the holistic approach, which I think rolls into number 8, right? The 8 key performance indicators. Folks, when I put that together, I wanted to make that as simple as possible. Not too many, not too little. I started with just 2, right? And then you need to see, which is top and bottom business blood pressure, right? Top line, bottom line. They needed to add LO comp, and, what kind of volume did we do, and CPI was a number that was a byproduct of A minus B. Volume and the date is important. So how old is this data, right? So those are the things we'll see there, and I think that rolls into the whole it's a holistic approach to profitability.
Jumping ahead of me, big picture. Here we go, guys. Top 10 reasons why mortgage branch managers may not have an understanding of the P&L financials. Number 8, and Tom kind of went there. It's failure to see the big picture. Managers who are focused on short-term goals may not take the time to understand the long-term financial health, and I'll understand that underline the health of the business, because it's the big picture, gap. Talk about that, and then we'll give the ChatGPT response, Tom.
Well, again, big picture focus, right? Big picture is, again, that holistic approach, as we talked about. Let's fix the system and then go do more loans. Let's don't do more loans and try to fix the system. More loans will not fix a broken system. The system itself, what is the model? What model are we creating on the financial side? It's the model, right? We have to build a profitable model, and then back up the truck and do as many loans as you possibly can, because we know the throughput, the output, the throughput of coming from A all the way down to Z. We know what it's going to look like, and they'll give you the confidence to be able to do that. Yeah, we need to make tweaks every once in a while with market changes and people changes and product changes and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, you've got to look at this big picture. And I think the other problem that I see on the big picture side is I've got a branch manager who maybe is not compensated on the P&L, and they're rolling losses up to corporate. Big picture is, guys and girls, that if branches are losing money, eventually it's going to affect the corporation. We see it with companies going out of business during this recent 2-year period. Right? It's a matter of why did the company go? When I go back to that fix, right? When I go back to that 4-month, feather in my cap, flipping from $90,000 loss to $168,000 gain. I go back to that. It was changing that system, right? It was a matter of being able to just change their thoughts. Measure, what are we measuring? We're measuring the dude was 51 basis points under the rate sheet. Didn't know it. I pointed it out, and he was mad at me. But I said, these are the numbers. You don't get to negotiate with math. 51 basis points under. How are you going to do that? Guess how he fixed it? He fixed it by increasing that number. When I told the organization, I will get you to the point of being able to be profitable, and how we're going to fix that is we fix the branch, which then fix the corporation. If the branch's success and failure will be a direct input to the corporation's success or failure.
I want to hit a little bit on the emotional side of it. You talk about him being mad at you, and we all have egos, and we face things that we work hard every day and say, hey, listen, we had a good month, we had a bad month, we're struggling, we're doing well. But when someone comes in, and it's kind of like that audit, I have a friend who goes out and audits, billion-dollar businesses, and he goes in and makes changes and guarantees kind of in a similar way, a return over the next year, because they will have increased their profitability. But what does it feel like? I mean, tell us about, maybe from your own experience, or when you're working with the branches, what you've seen over the years. What are some of the emotional pieces that say, listen, you're almost your worst enemy, because you allow, I guess we're talking about financial education, but not equipping yourself to be able to do better, because maybe emotionally you hold back, or you guard away from it.
I can tell you the hard part for me was when I first started doing consulting for companies and for branches and for individuals and coaching, going through that. They don't work for me. So don't shoot the messenger. I'm just showing you what your numbers are. Here's your number. If you don't want to do it, I understand. But at the end of the day, you work for XYZ. You don't work for me. I'm just pointing this out, and I'm going to try to guide you to the point. We're both on the same team. So by turning that region into a P&L region, it gave us the opportunity to be able to say, fix their individual branches, because now it was their money that they were going to lose. It was their money that they were going to gain. They fixed their money. which eventually fixed corporate's money with what was there. So it was hard for me in the beginning because they didn't work for me. When it was my company, it was easy, right? I just said, listen, this is my company. It's my game. This is how we're going to play it. I got tremendous support from the regional managers and, the owners of the company. There was tremendous support there. They bought into the concept of my system, right? But at the end of the day, they still don't work for me. That was the hard part.
It's funny. It's kind of like maybe coaching. If anybody's coached a kid's, baseball team or soccer team or anything like that, you can go out there and probably score some goals or hit some home runs or pitch some strikes. But when you teach the kids, sometimes they just it takes some time to kind of learn it. But so we coach and we lead people the right way. Here's the response from ChatGPT on number 8, Tom. Limited financial experience. Provide branch managers with opportunities to gain financial experience through cross-training, job shadowing, or rotational assignments. I want to kind of focus on the job shadowing. Now, it's not job shadowing what we do, but what you're able to do is to look at, other branches' numbers. We talked about that briefly. I don't want to, belabor it, but ChatGPT basically says that if you can look at other branches and kind of shadow or look at what they're doing good and what they're doing bad, to not do those things, that's key, right?
No doubt. No different than when you're looking at, go back to another sports analogy, when they're going to draft rookies, coming out of the football realm, right? What did he run in the 40? That's their benchmark. Joe ran 4.2. Steve ran 4.5. Well, who's going to probably go higher in the draft? Probably the guy who ran faster. But if you're not measuring it, it's like, I don't know, just show up willy-nilly. It's different. I mean, it just becomes, a whole different ballgame, when you're not measuring. There's got to be a batting average. And I think that's the struggle in the mortgage industry is, we're creating a new benchmark.
All right, Tom. So let's move to we're top 10 reasons why a mortgage branch manager may not have an understanding of P&L or financials. Number 9. So we're almost done, everybody. And it's lack of mentorship or support. Without guidance from a mentor or support from colleagues, some managers may struggle to learn about financial statements like the P&L. So there's so much we can talk about this from your mentorship support that is offered, that we give, that you give, colleagues kind of support. And we've had a lot of people, I think, come to this through other, I think even just we've seen this week where people are sending people from their company over to kind of be a part of the academy and that type of thing. But talk about how important mentorship's important, Tom, and kind of being around your colleagues to find out what good looks like.
I've been to, I think, I don't know how many Todd Duncan events, right? And Todd does a tremendous job of being a mentor with showcasing somebody doing $100 million, right? But the difficulty is the mentorship that's out there is typically on volume. It's not on financials, right? So I think that's the role that I've assumed that I'm going to fill with the monthly meetings after you get through the academy, to be able to look at this and mentor people and be able to ask as many questions as you might need to be able to get a clear understanding of that. I still remember doing site visits to a lot of people that had it figured out. How did you do $50 million a year 30 years ago, right? I mean, Greg Frost was the guru in the whole mortgage business, and we all wanted to see what Greg did. That's a mentorship, but it was based on volume. It wasn't. He didn't expose his financials. Nobody knew what Greg was doing for revenue. They only knew what he was doing for volume, and I think that's the void that I'm trying to fill with the Branch Profitability Academy and the ongoing membership to Branch Profitability, which is those monthly meetings.
And I want to kind of talk outside of just this industry because I think it's relevant to say, I have some family that are, medical arena surgeons, things like that. When you're a surgeon and you go through medical school, you have to do a residency and then maybe a fellowship or a fellowship, depending on your specialty. But these are all basically mentorship opportunities. They go through this to be able to do what they do. So when we look at what's done here in the mortgage industry, we talk about mentorships and shadowing and that type of thing. It's no different than any other industry. You can't go out and do a surgical procedure on someone if you haven't seen 100 of them or had gotten your hands dirty and that type of thing. So it's no different here. So I like that. Here's the response from ChatGPT in number 9: inadequate compensation structures. Consider adjusting compensation structures to incentivize financial performance, such as profit sharing or performance-based bonuses. I know you've had a lot of success with profit sharing, but talk a little bit about this piece here that ChatGPT gives us in response.
Going back to the yellow compensation laws that changed, I think it's probably 7 or 8 years ago at this point. The byproduct, a company can afford to pay you, let's just call it 100 basis points, right? And your rate sheet is going to reflect how they're paying you, right? If you say, hey, listen, I need 200 basis points in compensation, the positive side of LO comp is, well, then we'll just adjust your rate sheet to get you to the point. We have to generate more revenue. We have to generate more revenue for you, for the company, in order to pay you out 200 basis points. It means your rate sheet's going to be higher. And I think that's the missing link here, is that we can always pay them more, right? Or we pay them less. The age-old question is this, and I drive companies crazy, accounting people crazy, all the way up and down the line. I mean, I make them a little bit, I call it a tax. When a company is in a P&L environment, they're sweeping money off the top of the rate sheet. That's what I call a tax. They don't like it when I call it tax. And it's a tax. It's how much, and that's, sometimes it's disclosed, sometimes it's not. But at the end of the day, what do I get for my tax is the loan officer's perspective or the branch manager's perspective. They look at this and they say, okay, what am I getting for my tax? They will stay for a long, long time if they view the tax they're paying is well worth the value that they're getting. When people leave organizations, they leave because they view the tax as too high for what they're getting in return. That's the difference. And then, being able to, now you factor in a rate sheet and everything else with that. So at the end of the day, I remember creating our first profit sharing program. It was unbelievable, right? When did I do it? When we weren't making any money. I was willing to share the profit that we didn't have in order for everybody to row the boat in the same direction, to be able to make sure that we are getting profit. If you have a profit sharing program, there's no profit, it's irrelevant.
Well, and someone could easily say, well, that's easy, Tom. You have profit sharing when there's no profit, but you set it early. You're basically setting out goals that will happen. And then can you give us some insight on some of the profit sharing and what happened when the company did start, right sizing and doing really well? A lot of people throughout the system enjoyed in that. Is that right?
No doubt. I had kids out of college. One of our ways of being able to control the bottom expense number was I took A players and surrounded them with C players, which were kids right out of college. We would go to Illinois State and hire kids right out of college, and we'd teach them the mortgage business. We called it layered training. But they were coming in at scale that was probably maybe 50%, 60% of what the A players are paying. So we were able to blend that. But I still remember the biggest profit sharing program that we had, the biggest year that we ever had. I had kids that were $30,000 a year employees that were making $8,800 in bonus checks. That's a lot of money. I still remember one of the girls coming up to me and saying, Tom, could you cash our check? They got an $8,800 check at the meeting. It's like, I can't cash an $8,800 check. They thought I was just like, had bundles of cash in my pocket. I don't know, but that was a lot of money back then for people. And it was a matter of, there was a whole culture piece there for that. It's a whole nother, we could go hours on that subject of how I put it together and what I did with it. But it was a very powerful way to be able to get everybody to row the boat in the same direction.
I remember one story. There was one employee, I think, that was a big scuba diver, and I think he got a $10,000 check. And what he did is went out and bought all the diving gear, scuba gear for him and his wife, and then they ended up, diving all over the world, that type of thing. So it's those opportunities which buy the scuba gear, which create memories for a lifetime in different, in this case, parts of the world, and probably something that he would share for the rest of his life.
Yeah, it was
Um,
we called them majestic moments, right? It was the memories that people. The reason why people stayed as long as they did at Majestic Mortgage was because of it's how do you measure that, right? How do you measure the fact of being able to, finally get the stuff there, or taking your mom on a cruise for the first time, and very emotional piece that were, really positives.
and there's a lot of that missing today. A lot of culture is challenged with loyalty and things like that. All right, number 10, drum roll here. We got to get that, maybe that sound effect here, Tom, for one of these top 10. So top 10 reasons why a mortgage branch manager may not have an understanding of the P&L and financials. Number 10, misconceptions about the role of accounting. Some managers may view accounting as a separate function of the business rather than an integral part of the overall process. I know what you've done really well is getting your financial people, your CPA, your accountants to speak your language, so you as an entrepreneur, your mindset, sales mindset, can understand the numbers quickly. And that's what it says here, making them an integral part of the overall operation. Talk about how you've been able to do that.
My belief in the accounting world is that when these guys or girls get a CPA next to their name, they graduate and they get a tuning fork that comes along with that engages part of their brain that mine will never get to. They have this unique ability to be able to think differently than I think as a salesperson coming from the street side of the business. Where we had the biggest breakthrough was when I got the accounting people to adapt to the way I was thinking rather than the other way around. I was never going to get it their way. They could get it my way. When I have an accounting internal or external look at these numbers, it's easy for them. Now, yeah, they've got their job is to make sure that that the expenses are in the right category and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, they've got to adapt to the way we think. And I think that's the big story. Now you could do it without it. I've got branches that don't have that corporate still hands them a stack of P&Ls and they still look at it in the 8 key performance indicators. It's not a necessity, but it's a matter of I think the problem in the mortgage business is that we don't communicate at the lowest common denominator, and that's the branch manager. If he's managing that P&L, we've got to communicate at his level, not the way CPAs think it, because otherwise you're just going to gloss over the loan officers. The loan officer who became a branch manager, deer in headlights. He's going to look at it like, say, okay, boss, I got it. Just like, did I make money or not? They don't know why they made money, or they don't know why they didn't make money. In our situation, I guarantee you they know.
Yeah, and it's the response of ChatGPT in number 10, and their response is insufficient support from upper management. Ensure that upper management is fully committed to the financial management and provides adequate support and resources to branch managers to help them achieve financial goals. Offer regular feedback and support to help managers develop financial skills and knowledge. So that's kind of the number 10 response, kind of a global response.
In their language.
And I think that's it, right? Your answer is kind of the same as that. What they're saying here, the AI says, is, and there's different structures that are listening, right? From a one man, a small shop to, a corporate wide. But I think you're right. If you can tune the fork so the branch manager who is never going to be a CPA can understand the numbers, which allows them to make adjustments, make decisions that will improve profitability overall. I mean, make the shift, right? So tell us about your thoughts on that number 10 and how they kind of speak the same language there.
At the end of the day, what do we want, right? I mean, if you really stop and think about it, cut through all the noise and get to anything else. We want the branch to be profitable. The branch is profitable. A byproduct of all the branches means the corporation will be profitable, right? It's a for-profit organization, or you should change your name to .org, xyzmortgage.org, right? It doesn't, not for profit. It's a different ballgame, right? But you're there to make money. And I think there's a fine line. The balancing act here becomes, how do I put a rate sheet out that's going to be competitive in the marketplace? How do I pay good ops people to be able to keep them? How do I pay a loan officer enough money to be able to keep them? And bundle all that together with a rate sheet. That's the struggle, right? It's got to be a balancing act. And I think it just comes down to The fork in the road, I've said it over and over again, the fork in the road. Fork in the road is you got to make a decision. Do you want to go down the price side of the business or the value side of the business? Price or value, pick one. Don't be in the middle. Pick one. You can be a great company trying to be the lowest price on the street, being a very, very competitive rate.
Yeah, and that's a whole conversation there, a topic maybe in another podcast. Let me just kind of close it out here. Our top 10, we just finished that. Our first 5 are in our earlier podcast. Go ahead and listen there. I know, Tom, there's a lot of great information here. If someone wanted to, I know you do a webinar, maybe a couple times a month, a free webinar where someone can learn this process at no charge. I think they go to, is it profitabilitywebinar.com, all one word, profitabilitywebinar.com. And can you tell us, a little bit about what they might learn in that free webinar?
I went kicking and screaming on this one, Tim. Our Branch Profitability Academy is 7 modules. I won't get into detail as far as what they are. You can get branchprofitability.com and they'll give you all that information. But the first module is understanding the system. And that to me is the glue to hold it all together. I got coached and guided to the point being able to say, Tom, give it away. If you really want to make an impact in the mortgage business, give it away. So that profitability webinar will give you module 1 and they'll teach you exactly how to do it. If you want to do it, if you really want to learn how to be able to do it, just plug in. I actually have you bring your own P&L. We'll actually convert it for you, and you'll get the end result will be your P&L will be in the 8 key performance indicators. Now, if you want to learn how to troubleshoot it, you need to come to our, the academy, and we'll show you how to improve the top number, how to decrease your bottom number, what is fair in the yellow comp world, right? How do I get more loans? When am I involved with the client? And then talking about it from a branch manager's perspective, how do you take everything and put it into a recruiting mode? Because that's what you want to do now. You want to find like-kind individuals from a recruiting standpoint. You don't need, if you're a value-based branch, you don't want to attract price-based originators to work in your branch. The two won't fit.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Culture is key there. So it's branchprofitability.com to get more information overall. I think seats are limited on these webinars because I think Zoom only allows so much. So I think that is www.profitabilitywebinar.com. And it's all spelled out, PROFIT, ability, ABILITY, webinar.com. And if the spots fill up, if there's no seats, I think maybe just email info@profitabilitycoach.com. And if you were on the podcast, just maybe leave a message there and we can, see if we can get you a seat. We want to be loyal to our listeners. We've gotten some emails and on Twitter and on LinkedIn, from these podcasts. So please send any questions. Probably easiest through email or find Tom on LinkedIn, but email can go to tom@profitabilitycoach.com. Always go to the website or LinkedIn. He's Tom Ward there, and he's pretty active, and you can see a lot of his daily updates and things like that there too. So I think we're almost done. Any final thoughts, Tom?
I'm here for you. I mean, as far as the plug in, folks. I mean, this is a stage of my life that I really want. In the beginning of time, there were people there to help me get to where I needed to get, and they did it. With the kindness of their heart, and probably could have charged me a whole lot more money than they charged me. But they were there in the beginning of time. I want to be there for you. And it's a for-profit organization, though, so I can't just give everything away for free. But it'll give you an opportunity to be able to just, I promise you at the end of the day, you will look at this and say, wow, value added, right? If I can't, I'm a firm believer that says if I can't make you money, I don't deserve to take yours. I mean, that's just who I am. So best of luck out there. Let me know what I can do to help.